Welcome to All Things Flamingo podcast with the Flamingo Group and myself, Beth Reilly. Join us as we discuss all things to do with our community, real estate, and all things Flamingo. Welcome and tune in for a flocking good time. Well, hello. My name is Beth Reilly, and I am the host of All Things Flamingo, which is mainly based in Bloomington, Minnesota. And today I have the honor of talking to Bruce Colton, who is running for City Council at large. Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me here, Beth. It's very nice to join you tonight.
Well, thank you. I think you're going to be my last political candidate that has agreed to talk to me. So thank you for that. I appreciate your time and also getting to know you and learn more about your position and why you're running.
More than a pleasure. I've had such a good time. When I die, people are probably going to say, gee, he was a good guy, but he kind of kept to himself. But this campaign has definitely pulled me out of that box, and I've talked to people all over Bloomington and enjoyed every minute of that.
Good. So tell me give me a little bit of background. How long have you been in Bloomington? As you can tell, get to know more about Bruce. So if you could give me some of the highlights, and then we'll move into why you actually wanted to run for city council.
Sure. Actually, do a recalculation on that. I've actually lived in Bloomington for 48 years. I came here in 75. And I bought a house in Bloomington after living here in a townhouse. And the one thing I remember is looking at the costs of that house and looking at the taxes that I paid for that house and kind of saying, gee, that's not bad. But today it's a completely different story. I look at it and I go, holy cow, it's really I'm starting to feel it, So things have changed a lot in the last 48 years. I can't even count. It's been so long, but no. So I went to the University of Minnesota. When I graduated, I went to work for Control Data. I worked at Control Data 5 minutes away from my house all the time in Bloomington, and worked in Control Data government systems on some of their more confidential projects.
Okay. And then you got your master's degree, and then you got your PhD, but you didn't write the thesis. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. I went into the Navy, got out of the Navy after learning how to be an electronics technician. Then when I got out of the Navy, I was kind of a rough kid. And I had dreams of adventure in life. Well, the Navy kind of set me straight, put me on a different path of one of academic learning. And I found myself basically in 2 hours of the very first class I was there, I completely changed my life. And from there, I became the best electronics technician they had, I would say. And at the end of that, I wanted to go on and get more schooling. It's kind of actually the foundation of one of the programs I'd like to initiate, and that's a really good apprentice program. They do have something that they've started in the schools, which is a career college academy. I learned about that from Beth Beebe, and that's good. They do a lot of career cultivating of kids. I think it's important for kids to learn that life is about work, and valued work is oftentimes very, very interesting, and you can really enjoy and have a much better life when you learn how to capture some of those skills that are needed.
So you decided to take action to run for city council because you were starting to look at the legacy for your grandchildren. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's totally about that. It's not only my grandchildren, but what actually triggered in my mind is I was driving on my usual shortcut in Bloomington, and I saw this lady pulling a wagon behind her, and in the wagon there was this little blonde 3.5-year-old girl with what I call the fountain top ponytail on the top. And as I went by her, she was so beautiful, and I started to think, my gosh, what I've talked all my life, I've shot my mouth off, and I've talked about issues in government, big and small, but what have I actually really done, and what am I leaving for that little girl? And then also thinking, all of my own grandchildren. So this effort that I'm out after is just to try to do better, to try to show people that there is a better way in government, and try to give a course correction, try to bring the people's voice into government, try to make government a little bit less insular as it seems to be right now.
Okay. And when you say insular, my understanding is that you kind of see as government as being separate from the people.
Well, they they typically they're becoming more and more separate with some of the actions that they're taking. They claim to have a great rapport with people and a lot of openness for comments, but everything that I hear from people is that when they used to be able to talk to them live in the city council, they would just get head shakes and nods, but they already knew that the plan was pretty much in the bag. And I would like to change that. I would like to actually have a standing committee that would be one level below the council. And when somebody comes in with an important issue, I would like to have that issue examined during the week, next 2 weeks, bring the people in that have the issue, talk about the aspects of the issue that would need to be addressed, and then present the findings of that standing council, that standing committee, back to the city council. Make it a much more active, a much more reactive council to bring the people really into government.
Mm-hmm. Would that also mean your volunteers would be your basic Joe, your basic Bloomington guy, could be part of the volunteer committee or part of the committee to solve the problem?
I think the standing council would be people, the standing committee, I should say, would be people from inside Bloomington city government. But the people that are coming in and talking and presenting their cases, and anybody that they would want to bring in to help support their cases, would all be the average resident of Bloomington looking for a solution, trying to exercise their right to either protest, grievance, whatever it might be. The council needs to be responsible to the people, and that would be one of the main priorities there.
So you're kind of thinking it's time to reset the clock.
Yes, I mean we do things. Most governments actually, it's almost common in government to do like increment-based budgeting. So they look at what they spent last year and they increment it by a certain amount each year, and that's how it gets done. And I'm sure that anybody who's ever worked in any kind of an industry that had departments, that you were in the department and say, oh, we got to do this. Otherwise, if we don't spend all of our money, we won't get it next year.
Yep.
And there's almost a built-in inflation in that kind of budgeting. So I'm looking to reset the clock. Let's even talk almost symbolically into something like a zero-based budgeting, where you zero out all of the budgets each year and you build them up to the bottom to see what they're needed. Any combination of some of the more modern budgeting techniques, value proposition budgeting, or that's another good way to look at how many people are being affected by the dollars that you're spending, which is a real problem for me. We think of taxes on the taxation side. We think of dollars per people, but on the spending side, on the other side of the equation, we should be thinking of how many people are affected by the dollars that we spend, and then make those judgments. That's what value proposition budgeting would do. But all of the services, we have some great services. Our police department is fantastic. I'm not talking about cutting any services, but there's fat everywhere. You have to look for the fat. You have to kind of just, let's be respectful of the citizens' money.
So you'd like to slow down in some areas then?
Oh boy. Yeah. If you're in a business and things are not all that great, which I think everybody would agree that we're kind of in some tight times right now.
Inflationary.
I'm sure, Beth, you've seen it in the housing industry as well. I'm sure you've had to make modifications and adjustments. We need to actually really learn that sometimes you have to take your foot off the gas and slow down and let people's incomes catch up to the taxation that you're forecasting you need. We have to be responsible to that. So, yes, that's what I'm saying. And basically change, reset, get a different way about how we do the common things. The the people that I like that are running for council, they all have fresh ideas. And one of the ideas is, for example, we think about the Bloomington Ice Garden, which is part of this 9% sales tax increase. Well, how about naming rights instead of putting it all on the taxpayer's shoulders? How about really investigating what it costs? Like one of the people that's running as a non-incumbent, but running in sort of the group that we formed is Paul King. And he actually researched, the city has made a claim that they can't get the refrigerant anymore because it's an old-fashioned system. Well, we did the research on it, and the people that actually do that work, they said there's plenty of refrigerant. We don't manufacture it, but we recycle it. How green is that? They've got plenty of refrigerant, and they looked at what it would cost to actually do what they need to do in the Bloomington Ice Garden. And it's far, far less. It's down, if it was 3 times what they're saying, it would be $3 million, not 37 million. So there's a lot we need to look into. We need to find truth. I think, truth is very, very important to me, because, really, absent the reverence for truth, democracy is, serves no better than despotism. You have to revere truth.
So you want to protect Bloomington's quality of life?
Yes. And I'll bet you do too. being somebody in the real estate business, and anybody who lives here, we see things and movements. I want them to think about Bloomington residents first. Does that sound callous? I don't know. Some people might say that's callous, but I don't think so. Bloomington residents have made their investments in Bloomington, in their homes here. And the reasons that they moved here were for many of the reasons that the city council would like to change, the current city council would like to change to implement their view of what the future should be. They would like to subdivide lots into smaller lots. So they put smaller houses on those lots. So that people from out
smaller lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I moved to Bloomington 48 years ago. I have to think about that number. 48 years ago, specifically because of the large lots. That was one of the primary reasons I came here. The nice people, the large lots, the green grass. I don't want to see that go away. I don't want to bring Minneapolis to Bloomington or St. Paul to Bloomington. And by the way, it's not just Bloomington that tries to copy the bad ideas of other councils. That's one of the recommended things that should not happen. A bad idea is a bad idea. Ideas should stand on their own 2 feet for the residents of Bloomington. That's what I believe. I don't want to spend anything that doesn't help the citizens of Bloomington. I'll spend everything that's necessary, and I'll explain to the people that, why it's necessary. But some things right now, especially, we need to be very, very vigilant about our spending so it doesn't come back on us as well. How long are they going to keep a sales tax at 9%? And that's another thing. I mentioned before that Paul King had researched the cost of Bloomington Ice Garden. Well, I researched this statement that they make about 66% of the tax is paid by other people. I actually went and talked to the person, and it's only one person, by the way, that did that study. It's kind of couched in terms of the University of Minnesota did this study, and that's what it is. I talked to the person, a really nice person, really, very open and honest about his study. He didn't even talk to the mega mall. I talked to the mega mall, and I asked him, well, okay, so how much do you sell every year? $1 billion, because I'm new to this. I'm just a dumbbell. I went there and I asked him, well, how much do you sell every year? Well, $1 billion. How much of that is taxable? Because I know that they got a heavy clothing, thing going on there. Only half of that is taxable. And then half of that is for people outside. So that's $250 million of outside sales. Bloomington does $3 billion in sales in Bloomington proper, and much, much more percentage of that will be taxable. So I know that that's 66%. That's a nice way to get it in. And the other thing is that if Bloomington says, well, we're going to lead the way and we're going to go to 9% sales tax. Well, do you and because we want other people to pay our tax. Well, do you think Edina's going to sit back and not raise theirs tonight? They're already talking about it. So you're going to be paying 9%. You lead the way, you open Pandora's box. And remember, the state sales tax is 6.75%. And they gave permission to raise it for local localities. And sure enough, do you think they did? Of course they did, because government always does that. It's take, 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 you know. It's just the way of government. You know, I look at, for example, when I went to the University of Minnesota, I spent $125 a quarter. By the time I finished, it was $300 a quarter. But and I went back and I looked, if you look at the University of Minnesota, starting from the time that they issued government-based loans to cover university tuition costs, it's gone up no less than 8% every single year. Some years, many years, 10% and 12% every year, because the government got involved and they backed it up. I went to school in housing that was done for World War II guys. It was wooden housing. I got just as good of an education. You know, so we just have to just realize it's not our money. It's the citizens' money. I think you can see I'm passionate about it. And it's not just because it's my money, but it's your money and it's everybody's money. It should be treated respectfully.
Right. Life cycle cost initiatives. What's that?
Oh, basically, you can kind of see it when you build something, you have to understand that it has to be maintained. And you have to put that in the budget and understand that you just can't let something like Creekside, you know, run down. You know, buildings have to be maintained, and that's a part of the cost of keeping the quality of life in Bloomington. It's one that's pretty weakly observed in Bloomington. It's much more grandiose to build the grand building. I mean, have you seen the facade that they have for the quote senior center? I tell people the senior center is about that big. The Taj Mahal of senior centers, you can't even get it on the screen, is that big. And so you've got pools, you've got exercise facilities, you have all these things in there that basically trample over the quiet space that seniors would really like to have. Creekside, most people want to keep the natural environment of Creekside. And I've heard issues about erosion. I hear people saying that's not true. I'm not going to comment on that. But Creekside, everybody I've talked to who uses that, they say, we want to walk on the dirt paths. We want to have an experience underneath the canopies of nature. We don't want to be walking down Nicollet Avenue. It's kind of clear, you know, and all that adds up. The Taj Mahal adds up to $107 million. Do you know what the yearly budget of Bloomington is?
What?
$80 million.
Yeah,
$80 million. It's $27 million over the budget, over the yearly budget of Bloomington. It's huge. It's not little money. And then you add on to that $57 million for Creekside and for what am I missing? And the
9 Mile.
Big. The Bloomington Ice Garden. You know, pretty soon you're talking real money, as some comedian used to say. So I know I'm passionate. I know you can see I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about, you know, good government. And it's, you know, I mean, I'm passionate about it not only at the Bloomington level, but what we see happening on the Bloomington level is happening on the national level. People really realize that government does start at Bloomington. Even some of the decisions that have been made in the legislature this last session, you know, about conversion therapy and some of these other more topical or controversial issues, that all bubbled up from Bloomington, from the Bloomington positions.
I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. What's conversion therapy?
Well, all of the push for transgenderism and so forth, that it's not legal now to try to convince somebody that maybe you should think about this twice, you know, but it's fully legal to promote them making the change. And when I got my degree in electrical engineering. I got it with a biomedical specialty. I got it with basically, I worked on epilepsy within the brain. So I know a lot about physiology. I know a lot about neurology. I have a pretty broad spectrum of knowledge about many, many things. And I'm telling you that what's going on, what's going on is not even paying any attention to the facts. For example, when I was in the council debate, the subject came up about whether are we doing enough with the new passing of the law of making marijuana legal, and people in the council actually said that, well, we have to figure out how to take advantage of the tax money. If they knew anything, they would know that the medical facts, I'm talking facts, I research everything I do. The medical facts say that marijuana is one of the biggest gateways to schizophrenia. And they're seeing spikes in schizophrenia as more and more use of marijuana is being done. Transgenderism is just, these children, they talk about, these are children. These are our children. Yeah. They talk about, well, we'll just postpone their puberty. Do you know what happens in puberty?
Yeah, I know.
So much happens in puberty, bone strength and everything like that. They're ruining a person's life for the rest of their life with this stuff, so it's all controversial. And I wish we'd stop calling people names and just start talking about the issues and getting back to being real Americans. Real Americans used to talk over the pickle barrel, right? I don't believe in that. And well, I believe in that, so. Right. And here's the other thing that, I've got a little card. I wish that I could put it up, but the little card has all the people that are running for office. They're all non-incumbents. If I mention Dave Clark, me, Jonathan Minks, Al Nord, Paul King, Mike Hartley, who was the ex-police chief. Oh, by the way, we have the best police office in the nation, really, I'd say. Yeah. And everybody around Minneapolis and the area says this is the one they wish they could serve on. And Mike Hartley had a lot to do with that, and Victor Rivas in District 4. But among those is Rick Oliva, Longo Orijo, and Sandra Johnson. They're running for school board. Right. Well, because I'm in this situation, I went to the school board meeting and I sat down and I listened to all these kids, talking about we're book banners because we don't want this pornography in the library. But what I learned out of that is that this, what I call this sacrosanct age of children, is being methodically invaded. And I found that they have books already targeted at kindergartners. The book that I'm speaking of is He, She, Me, I Can Be Whatever I Want to Be. And it's a pictorial book targeted at kindergartners, about, sexual confusion. Come on, please, everybody. Let's at least leave the children alone.
It's evil.
It is.
I'm not going there. Yeah, it's not okay. So your promise to the voters is to side with the people, not for the people. I think that's a pretty strong thing. Hold reason and principle uppermost in all matters. Vigorously test for necessity versus nicety regarding all spending. And remember always, it's your pocketbook.
That's 100% of why I'm running and what I'm trying to achieve. I really, I think you can tell, although I have very strong opinions, I will tell you right now, I like nothing more than being wrong. If I find somebody who can tell me something that I didn't know and show me that where I'm wrong, I almost you'll hear me compliment them and thank them every time, because again, truth matters. Truth is everything. And so I'm open, and everybody that I named on that ticket, that some of them have some ideas that I've challenged them on regarding, EV vehicles in the city going through and kind of pushing technology by getting EV electric vehicles on the road. And that person, started listening. Oh, yeah, I guess you're right, because again, there's where science, real science, not sort of gut level science, has a big role to play. our current energy needs all over the United States take place. It uses 0.5% of our land mass. To duplicate that with wind and solar takes over 22% of our entire land mass. Now, it's just not viable. Okay, it's just not viable. And if you look at Germany, they have a term there which is called energy poverty. And that's because in Germany, you can't store wind and solar energy. You have to have a place to store it. So they have switching systems that they switch back to fossil fuel. That system is so expensive, they can't even afford it. They call it energy poverty. That's how high the costs of energy have gotten in Europe, because they're trying to do what the green people say. We didn't talk about this either, but my wife is Icelandic. And I married her 58 years. No, how long have we been married? 58 years, right? So we're coming on 60. And I met her in Iceland. I learned how to speak Icelandic, but what I saw in Iceland was I saw the workings of the Communist Party. The old Villian was what it was called then. Right. And all of their techniques to control industry. Now, all of those countries all over the world are called the Green Party. The Green Party, because they know the best way to control industry and to control our prosperity in the United States is to control it via the green method. So it was I felt like a square peg in a round hole when I had the League of Women Voters quiz, because I was always out of sync, because I know truly scientifically, that the green thing that one solar flare can set back 40 years of us trying to save carbon dioxide. It's just, we got to become truthful.
So there's a quote that you said to me the last time, in our pre-talk, and I thought it was an interesting quote. Would you like to?
Beth, this is funny. I went and I looked up the same quote. I had to find it was Michael Koff, because I knew it. But this is kind of, there was such a shock, because I went to a homecoming football game, and I talked to the people that were filing into the homecoming football game. And then I went to a fundraiser where people are worried about what's going on, with the government and so forth. Right after that, the juxtaposition was so sharp. The people that were pretty much the people that were going to the football game, many of them, there was just like kind of two separate categories of people. Some that just, they didn't care. They just wanted it the way it is. They don't care if they could use a bigger and bigger stadium, and they weren't really looking at what was laying ahead of them. And so when I went to the other meeting, people were right on worrying about what the future is, what lays in our future ahead of us. And that's when you had made mention of the fact that people have lived so good. It was you that actually brought this up. You said, because people have lived so good for so long that it's hard for us to see beyond that. That's what you said. And that recalled to my mind this quote, that hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times again.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. This will be our last podcast interviewing school board members and everything. So I appreciate this, Bruce. I think you wrapped it up well. I
would just like to say, everybody vote November 7th, vote for change, because change is the lifeblood of good government.
There you go. And everybody, if you need to buy or sell a home, I'd love to be a realtor of choice, and I'm willing to earn that position. So thank you for your time.
That'd be a good one. I'm going to be calling you, Beth.
Thanks, Bruce. Have your neighbors call me too. Thank you so
much. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.